All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to Tool Time Tuesday. See if some people are joining us. Happy Tuesday. Happy almost end of June, which is kind of crazy to me. We will just get started in just a couple more seconds, just give some people some time to log in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, well, it is 12:01. I think we might have a little smaller group, which is pretty typical for us in the summertime, but thank you everyone for taking time out of your day to join us today. My name is Andrea Young, and I'm a parent educator and communications lead here at ECAC. Today, we are joined with Brittany Cutshaw, who is the North Carolina DeafBlind Project co-director, and she is here to talk about the Helen Keller DeafBlind Awareness Week, which is this week. And if you didn't know, Helen Keller's birthday is in 2 days on June 27th. So she is going to be talking about that along with the North Carolina DeafBlind Project and resources for deafblind families. So Brittany, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you everybody for joining us this Tuesday. My name is Brittany Cutshaw. I am a co-director of the North Carolina DeafBlind Project, and I work here at ECAC alongside Andrea. Today we are celebrating DeafBlind Awareness Week. Helen Keller's birthday is coming up soon on June 27th. And DeafBlind Awareness Week is observed every year during the last week of June to celebrate Helen Keller's birthday. We are also celebrating all of those who promote literacy for children who have a combined vision and hearing loss. I wanted to share with you quickly the opportunity to contribute to the proclamation. I have a handful of resources that I will be sharing during today's presentation, which we will be able to send out following the presentation. This just gives a little bit of history on how the DeafBlind Awareness Week came to be. Okay, so I'm going to get started by sharing a little bit about our project and who we are, starting with myself. I started with ECAC in February of 2022 as a parent educator, much like Andrea. And then not too long after that, I rolled over into the DeafBlind Project lead. I am the mom of 3 boys, and the youngest of which is on the deafblind census with combined vision and hearing loss, along with other medical complexities. And not joining us today because she had another obligation is my colleague, Nancy Gerardo. She is our family engagement coordinator and also the parent of a young deafblind individual. And so if you ever needed assistance from ECAC on the deafblind side of things, you may always reach out to either myself or Nancy, as our roles overlap in many ways. So many of us may be familiar with the term deaf blindness, but there are some nuances that maybe not everybody is aware of. One resource that I like to frequently direct families to is the National Center on Deaf Blindness. I go there frequently if there's any questions that I have, or sometimes if I'm looking for resources to send to families. One resource that I really love is an overview on deaf blindness. So I just want to bring that up and share with you here a few key points about deaf blindness. You'll have to excuse me if I'm scrolling here. Okay, so deaf blindness is a combination of hearing and vision loss where the senses are reduced, distorted, or even missing entirely. And I will be sharing more information about that as we go along today. But this is just a general overview on deaf blindness from the National Center. It shares with us some of the leading causes on deaf blindness. Primarily speaking, we see here that 2 of the most common that we know about at this time are Usher syndrome and Charge syndrome. And there are multiple other factors that can be involved. Up to 50% of students or individuals with deaf blindness may have complex healthcare needs. So, this is something that we always want to inform our population about, that it is a little more rare to have someone with just a vision and a hearing loss and no other healthcare needs. So, we can assume that the majority of the children who we encounter will probably have other factors going on that need to be taken into consideration. As we get down to the bottom, looking at who is going to be there to support these children who are deaf-blind, we know about the educational team, the teacher of the deaf, the teacher of the blind or visually impaired, an intervener, and teacher of the deaf-blind even. We will be learning a little bit more about interveners today. And another team that I wanted to introduce you to would be your state's deaf-blind project. So in North Carolina, we have our North Carolina DeafBlind Project. All 50 states should have their own DeafBlind project as well. And that leads us into our next slide, which is an introductory video that was created by the North Carolina DeafBlind Project, which is a collaboration between ECAC, the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, or NCDPI, and Eastern Carolina University.
Hello! We would like to welcome you to the North Carolina DeafBlind Project. This project is a collaborative partnership between the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, the East Carolina University Teacher Support Program, and the Exceptional Children's Assistance Center. The North Carolina DeafBlind Project supports children ages birth to 22 with a combination of vision and hearing loss or with degenerative vision and hearing conditions. Support from the project is provided to eligible children, their families, and educators at no cost. Deafblindness is the combination of functional, medical, or progressive vision and hearing loss which may interfere with a child's ability to communicate and interact with others, access information, and/or move about safely and efficiently in familiar and unfamiliar settings. The type and severity of the combined losses differs from child to child and can have a significant impact on their development and learning. A child with deafblindness does not have to be completely deaf and blind. Many children may have a diagnosis such as Charge syndrome, Usher syndrome, sensory integration disorder, Down syndrome, or others. Support from the North Carolina DeafBlind Project can begin when the child is enrolled on the North Carolina DeafBlind Census. For more information about the North Carolina DeafBlind Project, including how to enroll a child on the census, contact any one of the North Carolina DeafBlind Project directors listed here.
So that is the contact information for the 4 of our co-directors. We have 2 co-directors working at the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, which are Dr. Alan Chase and Miss Virginia Madoran. And then our other co-director is Miss Sandra Warren, who works at Eastern Carolina University. One important takeaway of this video is that if you have a student or know someone who needs the DeafBlind Project, it would be important to get them on the North Carolina DeafBlind Census. If you have someone or know someone who needs to be on the census or have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to any of our co-directors for more information. So Barbara Miles is a well-known author and lecturer who has put out many materials on deafblindness through her personal experience and research that she has done. This quote really stood out to me. It may seem that deafblindness refers to a total inability to see or hear. However, in reality, deafblindness is a condition in which the combination of hearing and visual losses in children and youth cause such severe communication and other developmental and educational needs that they cannot be accommodated in special education programs solely for children with deafness or children with blindness or multiple disabilities. A person who is deafblind has a unique experience of the world. For people who can see and hear, the world extends outward as far as his eyes and ears can hear and can reach. For the young child who is deafblind, the world is initially much narrower. If the child is profoundly deaf and totally blind, his or her experience of the world extends only as far as the fingertips can reach. Such children are effectively alone if no one is touching them. Their concepts of the world depend upon what or whom they have had the opportunity to physically contact. When I read that quote, it opened my mind to a different perspective on deafblindness when thinking about the development of a young child. And that's what brings us to the concept of an educational intervener. An educational intervener is a newer position, and it is a valid position in North Carolina in the educational system. So I'll tell you a little bit more about interveners here as we go along. Interveners do work under the guidance and directive of a classroom teacher or another individual responsible for ensuring the implementation of the learner's IEP, such as a teacher of the deaf, a teacher of the blind, or a special education teacher. Some important things to note about interveners is that they provide consistent access to instruction and environmental information that's usually gained by typical students through vision and hearing, but that's unavailable or incomplete to an individual who is deafblind. That's the type of information that we refer to as incidental learning. So you walk into the cafeteria and you can see where your friends are, and so you go over to be near them, or you can hear somebody calling your name and you turn around to see who's calling. This is information that could be missed by a student who is deafblind. And one of the primary roles of an intervener is to serve as the eyes and ears for the person where their deficit lies, to provide them with the information that they're missing out on. Interesting thing about the intervener is that they also provide access or assist in the development and use of receptive and expressive communication skills. So their involvement is going to be more in depth and more in closer contact than that of an interpreter or a language facilitator, because they are really there to help assist with that development and reinforce the teaching that the student would receive around communication skills on an ongoing basis throughout the child's day. They can also facilitate the development and maintenance of a trusting and interactive relationship that promotes social and emotional well-being. And as a parent of a deafblind individual, I think that this is the one that really stands out to me the most. When you think about sending your deafblind student into the classroom, the social emotional development is one of the biggest aspects of learning in the public school system. And imagine being, a deafblind student without the access to really make those and develop those social relationships with friends. Having an intervener could really help you with developing the confidence and the skills necessary to communicate with others, whether it be peers, teachers, and learning those lifelong skills that are going to help throughout the lifespan. There are a couple of resources that ECAC does have shared on our website from North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. And I was really hoping that this would load so that I could share it with you. Let's see. Okay. So here is the compare and contrast between a deafblind intervener, which may be a new term to some of you. We do know what an educational interpreter is, and for the most part, maybe know a little bit about what a language facilitator is. There are overlap in all of these roles, so I thought it'd be very important for this information to be made available to families who may be considering one versus the other in determining which of these roles is best to support your child. This can also be handy for instructors or teachers or any member of the IEP team who may be considering whether an intervener would be appropriate. Some of the bullet points that I just shared with you came from clarification of the role and responsibility, and I really wanted to share all of this information, but of course it could be rather lengthy here. I think it is always important just to remember that the intervener will be working under the teacher and maintaining a professional student-teacher type relationship. But the relationship between the student and the intervener really makes a big difference when we have trust and reliability between the two. For the student to be able to open up and engage in their environment. There is a certificate and training program for interveners. It says here that the training is highly recommended. The training program for interveners comes through Eastern Carolina University, and our partners that work over there on the North Carolina DeafBlind project would be able to share much more information. If you know of anyone who is interested, starting as a paraprofessional, an educational interpreter, or anyone without the background that's interested in learning more about how to become an intervener, and actually be certified in that role. I just wanted to go over our partners' information with you one more time. The North Carolina DeafBlind Project is a collaboration between ECAC, Eastern Carolina University, and the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. Each of us have our own separate websites, and we do have a variety of information about deafblindness and resources available to families on each of those sites. There is overlap there, and another important factor is that ECAC does come out with a quarterly newsletter on the topic of deafblindness. If you are interested in obtaining any more information or learning about opportunities out in the community, please reach out to one of us and we can add you onto our listserv for our newsletter. And I'd like to share a few more resources with you that you could go through at your leisure. These will be listed in the follow-up email. These are all resources that I used for our presentation today. We have shared more information on DeafBlind Awareness Week, Helen Keller's birthday, and some other general information about deafblindness. Okay, and that's about it. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, Brittany. I would love to have everyone complete our feedback poll, which we always ask everyone to complete. And while we're doing that, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put your question in the chat or unmute, and we would be glad to answer any questions that you have. But I'm going to launch the poll if you don't mind answering a few questions. The grants that we work on require that we report back to them what we're doing is useful, relevant, and of high quality. I'm going to launch that real fast. And does anyone have any questions? We are recording this webinar, so I did see that a few people came in a little late, so I will be sure to include that link when we send out resources to everyone that attended. There's one question, will this PowerPoint or chart be available? Yep, okay, yep, we will be sending out Brittany's slides, so yes.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if all of my links will be clickable whenever we send it out in PDF form, so we can send out a resource guide as well.
Absolutely. Any questions at all? I actually had one question that I thought about when Brittany was presenting. Just curious, for interveners, do they tend to stick with the child throughout like every year of school, or does that change?
So intervener is an IEP team decision. And as we know, these roles may change throughout the years as different people come in and out of the positions. The thing about the intervener to keep in mind, though, is that there's not always a constant flow of new interveners. We want to advertise this position and hopefully get more of a following and more interest in it so that more interveners can be available to more students. In my experience, I have seen interveners following students through the years, simply because they do develop quite a close-knit and trusting relationship, and the student really does rely a lot on the intervener as the eyes and ears for any of the incidental information, learning, social relationships, and types of things. So it is quite possible for the intervener to follow the student through the years. It really just depends on the individual, and their value in that position and what their other interests are.
Great.
Another thing that I have witnessed, too, with the intervener role is that from time to time you will have established a relationship with the student before having the desire or the motive to want to become an intervener. So that can help with the lasting relationship if it's something or someone who you already know and you want to help them in a different capacity. Um, Unfortunately, though, after graduating from the school system, the intervener does not necessarily go with you. So that's something for consideration for families who may have an intervener while your child is in high school, considering what those next steps might look like for you or what life outside of high school is going to look like. And the North Carolina DeafBlind Project is doing work now in the area of transition for individuals with deafblindness. So if there is anybody in our audience today that would like to talk about what those options might look like, specifically for your child's complex needs, that's always something that the project can help with.
Great. Well, thank you, Brittany, for sharing all that important information today. If anyone, again, has any questions, feel free to type that in. We are taking off next Tuesday for our Tool Time Tuesday, as it is the 4th of July week. So we didn't think that many people will be joining us. So we will be off that week, but look for an email by the end of this week to share all of the upcoming July Tool Time Tuesdays. We have a good variety of sessions coming up and a lot of important information to share. So if anyone does not have any questions, we will let everybody go to enjoy the rest of their day. I thank you for your participation and thank you, Brittany, again for being with us today.
Of course, and thank you everybody for joining us today. I hope you have a great rest of your summer.
Great. Thank you.